Yes, Mr. Mayor, for the record, the council voted 4-0 to reject the claim of Gloria Jean Clinton.
Okay.
I need to adjourn that meeting now.
Okay, at this time, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn our closed session.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, meeting adjourned. At this time, I'd like to call the Newman City Council regular meeting of April 13th, 1999 to order. Can we please stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance? And at this time, could you please remain standing for the invocation? Thank you, God, for bringing us here safely tonight. Please give us the guidance and the wisdom to make the right decisions for our community. And this we prayed. Amen. Amen. May we have a roll call, please?
Present.
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 Present. Item number 5, these are communications from our staff. This time, the Chief of Police is coming up.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I have just 3 items I want to really bring up to you. We have a couple of parades coming up. We have the West Side Baseball coming up on this Friday, the 16th, 6 p.m. And they'll be using our downtown area, and we have everything under control for that one. And we have a second one coming up on the Sunday, the 25th, a walkathon by the West Side Niners. And they're going to be utilizing QR and S streets for their walkathon. And I don't see any problem with that at all. It's on back streets. Second thing I have is we have another community safety meeting coming up, our gang task force meeting, and our topic is going to be domestic violence. It's April 28th at 7 p.m. at Orristembo High School, room number 13. And the last thing I have is the Newman Fun Run that is scheduled for the 18th, this coming Sunday. We have everything in place, and we're just ready to have fun.
Right. Any questions for the Chief? No? Thank you. Any other staff communications? Okay. Items number 6. Item number 6, this is items from the public. These are non-agenda items. While the City Council welcomes and encourages participation in the meetings, it would be appreciated if you would limit your comments to 3 minutes so that everyone may be heard. Matters under the jurisdiction of the Council and not on the posted agenda may be addressed by the general public at this time. However, California law prohibits the Council from taking action on any matter which is not on the posted agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the City Council. Are there any non-agenda items? Okay. These are items from the public. These are agenda items. Any member of the audience desiring to address the Council on a matter on the agenda, please raise your hand or step to the podium at the time the item is announced by the Mayor. In order that all interested parties have an opportunity to speak, any person addressing the Council will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes unless the Mayor and Council grants a longer period of time. Okay. Item number 7, these are public hearings. Item 7A, this is a resolution 99 next to number, adopting reasonable fees to recover the costs associated with specific services. Margaret?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the Council. In 1960, sales tax, property tax, and motor vehicle fees made up 77% of the city's revenue. In 1998, it made up only 10% of all the revenue that the city receives. What this means is that the money that is collected for the city is specifically for certain services and restricted uses. It means that the general fund money is a lot less and that the council has less funds to make discretionary decisions, meaning to fund things such as police, parks, recreation, fire, finance, administration. As a result, and this isn't unique to Newman, many cities are faced with this. As a result, many cities have recognized the need to charge a customer and a consumer for specific services that they use that benefits themselves. The alternative is to eliminate various services. In 1996, the city adopted a cost recovery program. At that time, a number of services were identified, and the cost was affixed to those particular services. Tonight, we'll review the methodology that was adopted in 1996. We will identify the services that we're going to affix these costs to and review those. And also, the most important element is that you're going to decide, of the cost of a particular service, how much shall be recovered from the consumer and how much should be subsidized by the city. This is a common practice. It's a generally accepted practice by many cities as well as businesses. In the business community, it's been going on forever. The right for the cities to charge this way does exist as long as the fees are reasonable and justifiable. And in the spirit of that, staff keeps its estimates quite low and conservative. The services that we talk about must be identifiable. The costs must be measurable. You will see that there's some costs toward the front of your handout that are listed as new. And I want to clarify, these are not new charges. It's new in the respect that it's in this program and analyzed in this particular fashion. And there are a lot more to do, and those will be done throughout the year, depending as the need arises. Cost recovery is not a tax, such as a business license. It is not punitive. It's not meant to punish. It's not a penalty. It's not a fine. And it's not a means that the city would try to change someone's behavior. The purpose is only to recover the costs of a particular service as requested by a particular citizen. Okay, first we'll look at the services that were studied, reviewed. Of the 125 identifiable, we have done a 37 this evening. And just to go over this chart, FC, which is on this corner, refers to service center. It's just an identifiable number. When you look through the pamphlet, if you want to see return checks as number 20, that's where you would refer to. The service is listed, a description of the service, exactly what is it. The reference code is where in the code or a resolution does the city have the right to, has the city been authorized to charge this. The current fee on the books, the cost of providing the service, and then the recommended fee, which you will be approving this evening. Now, in order, those are the services that we've identified this evening. We are a service-oriented organization, so many of our services is the cost of the employees providing the service. So when you talk about service, you're looking at what's called the fully burdened hourly rate. That makes up the major cost. Okay. Just a second here. Oh. To look over on this side first. The cost versus annual rate, this is the normal projected salary of that particular position. Not necessarily the person in that position, but that falls within our range. The other fees, PERS is retirement, it's based on a percentage of the annual salary. You have health insurance, Social Security, workers' comp, liability, and uniform allowance. You add that together with the annual rate, and you get the total. That's unusual. Okay, total annual salary and fringe. This column right here, that's what it costs to have that employee, the straight salary. With 15% administrative fee, what's that? Well, when a person does the work, there's a lot of behind support for that particular individual. Payroll has to be processed. Supervisors exist to direct the work. You have administration doing the negotiations and personnel issues. So this is the support that is not identifiable in the normal fees. So you add about 15% to that annual salary fringes. Then you get the hourly rate. How do you get the hourly rate? There are 2,080 hours available for work for most government people that work 5 days a week. You take away 96 hours for paid holidays. You also take away an estimated amount for sick leave and vacation. It comes down to 1,894, I believe. It's written somewhere. And that's how you achieve the hourly rate. That is the hourly rate of providing that person's service. But in order to get that service, there's more to it than just the salary and directing one's work. There's the building cost and other overhead. That's this column over here. We have building overhead, and we'll go in a chart to see how that's achieved. Vehicle costs for all the employees who are assigned a vehicle is basically the maintenance, operation, depreciation that vehicle has, that it costs annually for that employee divided by the number of hours that you're available for work. Okay. The most cumbersome part is the cost of the building overhead. Okay. On the top left-hand side, you have maintenance. This is the cost of taking a building, in this particular example, City Hall, and all the maintenance costs that accrued during the course of the year. Total is $19,200. We figure the depreciation of the building. We figure the insurance. The grand total of the cost of maintaining City Hall is $24,000. Then you have bodies occupying that building. And what we're trying to achieve is to figure out how much does it cost for an employee's area so that they can do the work and provide the service. Particular City Hall, we have a total of 2,200 square feet. We're saying that of this 2,200 square feet, the manager occupies 15%. And how do we get that? His office is approximately 300 square feet. We have his office is 180 square feet. We have common area, which is the kitchen, our hallway, our conference room, which is divided amongst all the employees, is 175 feet. Total of 355 feet is allocated to the manager. You divide that by the total of square footage, and you get 15%. You multiply the 15% by the $24,000 that it costs to run the building and maintain it for a year. You get a cost of $3,794. If you look at your employee costs of building overhead, it should say $3,794 overhead cost for the manager annually. You add these costs together, primarily have most of the costs that it takes to pay for an employee doing that job. No relationship to the salary they receive. It's the cost of providing the entire service. That's the methodology. So we have gone over the services we're going to provide, the way the cost is allocated, and then the third item is how do you take these costs and charge it to the particular service. This is just an example worksheet of how that was done. The service is identified up here. Current revenue is collected in this particular account number. It ties into the budget and the general ledger. The current fee and the current reference code that gave us the right to charge that amount. When you find out how much it costs to provide a service, you first have to find out what it takes to provide that service, who does it, and how long does it take. If we receive a call from the bank to say a check has been returned, the account clerk has to get the cash, walk down to the bank, pick up the check, come back to the office, notify the party of the return check by mail or by sending the waterman out. This takes approximately a half an hour. You take their fully hour burden rate, which was on the first page under personnel, and you multiply that to get the cost of that employee providing that service. In addition, you have computer time. The computer has to post the payment. We have to go into the utility file and flag that account that it's past insufficient checks. You may have postage. You've got copies to be made. That's an additional $2.24. You have the bank fee. The bank charges us $4.50 for every returned check. So the cost of providing that service is $20.28. So staff would recommend we keep the fee at $20. This is how all 37 charges were achieved. We need to know the methodology is pretty much a generally accepted practice. The services are very identifiable. It's been done for a long time. The decision tonight is going to be to decide how much of this cost council is willing to have the consumer pick up or how much the city should subsidize. So of the 37, I don't know if you want to go over, answer questions of the 37 or how you want to address each individual one.
Well, rather than going through one by one, what we could do is if we have any particular questions on any of them. Okay. Are there questions for Margaret on any of these items? Just give us a minute.
Margaret, for people who couldn't see up there, all of these fees that we're charging are actually under what it costs us, somewhat.
That is intent, round down, be conservative, estimate low, because it's got to be justifiable and reasonable. There will be no question that these fees are at cost or below.
Thank you.
One question I had, I have the list in front of me of the new and revised fees, and there aren't that many of them considering how many we have out there. But I'm wondering on the DUI arrests, we haven't charged in the past for that, and I'm wondering why.
Initially, we didn't have the right, is that correct, Mike? Where did Mike go?
Mike had something he had to go take care of.
Okay. Initially, this is going to be an ordinance, placed in the ordinance the next council meeting. The chief is working on that. It's been a recently granted right. The cities have been doing it five years or so. We haven't imposed it yet. Mike, do you want to talk about the DUI fees, why we haven't been charging before?
The law does provide for that, but the reason we haven't been charging is I haven't written up the ordinance to be able to do that charge. So that's my task now, is to get that in place.
Right.
So,
Thank you.
okay.
Any other questions, Sheila?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Down at this end, any questions?
No question.
No, Kelly?
I do have one question. It's very minor, but I've heard a lot of people mention about the yard sale permit. There's some question about having the people notified, because what I've had, a person came up to me a couple of months ago and asked me why they were going to have to be charged for garage sale permit. And I guess what they had done was something that had happened to us, a couple of years ago too, was that they didn't know that you had to have a permit, and they had their garage sale ready, and the day of the garage sale, someone came by and told them they had to have a permit, so they had to put their garage sale all back, all just to have this permit. And it wasn't like they were having garage sales every weekend or whatever. So what I was wondering is, and this has nothing to do with this, but is there any way that we can notify people better? I mean, can we place something in the newspaper every week in the garage sale section that says, make sure you have your permit before you have your garage sale? Because I still think that there's a lot of citizens in Newman that are not aware that you need to have.
Was that person doing it on a Saturday or Sunday?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, 'cause you can get your permit and immediately.
Yeah, it was just.
It's a very minor formality
right.
to obtain it.
We can look into that. The other thing that we'll be looking at in this coming fiscal year also is possibly doing a city newsletter once or twice a year, and that's something we could possibly do as an education process through that. So, but I'll look into that and see if it may be something we can work out with the Madison newspaper to include that in part of their.
And I explained to them too that the reason why the city requires that there be a permit, it's just a minimal charge of $5, was to keep people from doing this professionally and disturbing their neighbors every weekend, having cars come by all the time and stuff. So, but that's something that aggravates people occasionally. So, it's good that they know about that.
Okay. At this time, I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there any questions on this matter? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the council for direction.
Move that we adopt staff's recommendation for this item.
Second.
May we have a roll call, please?
Yes?
Yes.
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 Yes, motion passes 5-0. Item 7B, this is also a resolution next to number authorizing submission of the annual final grantee performance report for the community block grant to the Department of Housing and Urban Development.
The city received notice from HCD in March of '98 that we have been awarded a $30,000 Planning and Technical Assistance grant. That grant expired in February. This is not a competitive grant. It's allocated on a monthly basis and to various applicants, and the city is allowed to apply once a year. Planning and Technical Assistance is a process in which allows cities or other local agencies to explore the possibility of doing a major project. In our particular case, the purpose of this grant was to apply for funding and monitor our senior housing project. During that time, we received $30,000 from HCD. The city was required to match that with $5,100, a catch match, and plus the city allocated in-kind and staff service, additional cost, staff time, as well as public notices and other costs that couldn't be covered by the other two items. The expenses of the grant was $26,500 was paid to self-help. A market study was done to reaffirm the need of senior housing in our community. That cost $3,285. An environmental review was done, phase 1, on the site of the project for $3,000. A portion of the appraisal was funded at $1,670. And there was a city administration fees that were recouped through the grant for $6,045. That totaled of $35,100. There's a lot more that's gone into the project during that time, and since then we have spent over $10,000 in additional appraisal fees and other fees that we needed to do to get this project on the road. A public hearing is required due to the use of the federal funds. And the staff to this point hadn't received any comments from the public, and asked council, once any public comments are taken this evening, to approve this resolution and the final paperwork to go into HCD to close out this grant.
Any questions for Margaret at this time? No. This is also a public hearing, so at this time I'll open the public hearing. Any questions for our finance director? If not, I will close the public hearing, bring it back to council for direction.
Move to adopt the staff recommendation.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 7C, this is also resolution number 99 next to number. This is a resolution declaring the existence of a public nuisance under ordinance number 95-4. Cleve?
Yes, this is a routine item that you've seen come before you again. As you know, our Public Works, or probably don't know, our Public Works Director is at a conference this week, so unable to attend the meeting. You do have before you, that was handed out tonight, a list of properties that we have identified as in need of property maintenance, and therefore we are recommending that you adopt the resolution that's attached to your agenda, which allows us to proceed with the abatement process if necessary.
Are there any questions for Cleve?
Yeah, I just had one. Is this a complete list? I know I had mentioned place of business last meeting.
Right. This is complete. This is an ongoing process. It comes back regularly to you, so there may be one on here that you've seen that is missed. I recall the one you requested us to look at, and they were going to look at that. I don't know if they got comments back from the company saying that they were going to take care of it or what, so they may not have put it on.
I drove by there the other day, and it looks like it's cleaned up the weeds on the...
Okay, thank you.
So it may have been taken care of. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Cleve, I have one question, and this is obviously something we're going to have to bring back for the future. We're in the process, we're looking at that Emil Railroad crossing to get done this summer. Also, we're also looking at doing a entryway for our business park through there.
Right.
And if we can possibly look at start sending letters out to the properties out in the industrial area to start looking at doing some cleanup out there as well,
Okay.
with some weed abatement.
We'll look into it.
Okay. At this time, this is also a public hearing, so I will open up the public hearing. If there are any questions, okay, I will close the public hearing, bring it back to council for direction.
Move that we adopt staff's recommendation for this item.
Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 8, this is a consent calendar. If there are any questions on the consent calendar, if there's anything that you'd like to be pulled, or would you like to take these all at one time? Okay, can we have some direction?
Move to adopt the consent calendar.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item number 9A, this is regular business. This is a proclamation declaring May as Senior Awareness Month and participation in Senior Awareness Day by making a donation of $120, I'm sorry. At this time, I'd like to, or Cleve, would you like to?
Just briefly, yeah, you have the report and the proclamation, as well as a letter from someone who we all know very well, who we welcome back to, also Janet Carlson. And Janet, if you would like to make a brief presentation on this, and then we'll proceed.
At this time, I'd like to ask Mayor Janet Carlson to come up, please.
A pleasure to be here, and a little strange to be on this side. But I thank you for the time. And as you know, it's Senior Awareness Month, and every year for 26 years now, the Commission on Aging has held a Senior Awareness Day, and it's coming up on May 1st. And all service providers and others that are servicing seniors will have booths at the fair. And also, they serve luncheon. And then, of course, they play the big game of bingo that everyone really enjoys. So we're here asking for the donations that all cities in the county have been asked to help defray some of the expenses of the gifts and the prizes for the bingo and the food. So I will cut it short there unless you have other questions that you'd like to ask.
Are there any questions for Janet?
What kind of attendance is there?
Oh, I was going to mention that. I'm glad you asked. Thank you. We're expecting about 1,000 seniors. So it's grown every year. It started out about 400. I think at the first year was something I understand about 250. From there it's grown. In 26 years, we expect about 1,000. So of course the cost has gotten a little bigger also, but it's helped. We help fund it through the Commission on Aging and the Stanislaus County, where we are affiliated with, of course. So, but it gets more expensive each year, and if you will consider $120, I would really appreciate it, and I know the seniors would, about 1,000 of them.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Thank you. At this time, I'll ask that we make a proclamation declaring May as Senior Awareness Month and participation in Senior Awareness Day by making a donation of $120 to them. Can we have some direction on that, please?
I make a motion that we go ahead with this proclamation and make the donation of $120 to the Senior Awareness.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Janet. And we'll have we're going to send along a proclamation.
Janet,
Okay. Okay.
Janet, one question. What classifies a person as a senior citizen?
Right. Okay. Thank you again. Okay, item 9B, this is ordinance number 99, next to number, an ordinance amending Title 5 of the Newman Municipal Code of Mobile Vendors. This is an introduction and waive the reading. Cleve?
I'm just going to turn this over to our planning director, Bob Borchard.
All right.
Evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. This has been before you a number of times, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over it. Essentially, at the direction of the council and the concurrence of the Planning Commission, the city is proposing to amend the zoning code to define mobile vendors and to basically put them under regulation with respect to a use permit. The regulations would basically allow them to be established with a use permit in the I zones, the industrial zones. It would off of Highway 33 and Hills Ferry Road, and would say that they basically have to be on private property. They can't be on a street or a right-of-way. We also have a special provision for the city manager has the authority, the jurisdiction to issue mobile vendor permits for street fairs, carnivals and farmers markets and special city-sponsored events. The public hearing was held before the city planning commission, city planning commission, at their last regular meeting, and it was recommended that this ordinance amendment be approved by the city council. The process is that you have an introduction and a waiver of the first reading. I believe the public hearing will be scheduled at your next regular meeting. At that point in time, the public will have an opportunity to review this ordinance in specifics and to comment. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions for Bob? No. Go ahead.
I do. I have a quick question. You're talking about things like those, like taco trucks and things like that nature. So basically, this will prevent mobile vendors from being just about anywhere, really, if it's visible from all these spots, right? I mean, where would they be able to set up in
the industrial zones.
in industrial zones?
Out on, and primarily that is on the southeast side of the city.
Okay. And so long as it's not visible from any of these streets that are listed here. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Are there any other questions for Bob? I just want to make sure before we, move on with this, I just want to make sure that if you wanted to ask any questions of our planning director, just to make sure you understand what's going on here. If you come on up and give your name and address for the record, that way we could get it. Okay.
Lola Leon, 405 East Linwood in Turlock. Okay. My question was to Bob, if the next meeting is going to let us know if they'll be able to put the vendors there or not yet.
Yeah, what we'll do is the next meeting we're going to have a public hearing, and we'll send you all the information. That way you could, that way we'll keep you informed as to what's going on.
Okay, but for now there's nothing yet.
No.
What happens is we have to hold the next meeting, which the ordinance will be adopted, and then it becomes effective 30 days following that. So is that correct, Bob? We didn't need more. Okay, go ahead.
Maybe I can give a little bit of clarification. Right now, under present code, if you have an outdoor sales, and this is how we got into this, any place in the C zones or the I zones or the M zones, it takes a use permit. That rule and regulation still applies, and someone can right now come in and take out an application for a use permit for a taco truck or a mobile vending, any place in the city in a commercial or industrial zone. However, as has been the practice of the city, it will be most likely denied. But if somebody were to take out an application for a permit in an I zone at the present time, that process can start immediately. I believe I advised you at the Planning Commission meeting, we can take out an application and move forward with it at present. The only thing is that it would need to be in the I zone and conform with these regulations before I believe the Planning Commission would approve it.
Okay.
And what we have basically done is codified the practice of the city.
Okay. Actually, Joan, you're going to have to come on.
I'm
Margaret, who would the sales tax? Oh, I see. Okay. Depending on how they list it on their business license. Oh, I see. Oh, okay.
For the benefit of the audience, the question was where the sales tax would go from this, from a mobile business.
It wouldn't go to Newman.
Not necessarily.
Huh?
As a practical matter, I bought a lot of tacos, and I don't think I've ever paid sales tax.
Okay. So we'll be sending them out the information. Just
Bob, once this ordinance is adopted, does it still require a use permit for one of these?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Is everything clear? Okay.
Have you really bought a lot of tacos?
Okay. At this time, we're going to bring it back to the council and ask for some direction on this matter. Can we have some direction on this item, please?
I have a quick question, I'm sorry. Are we at this time adopting this or just agreeing to put it on the calendar next meeting?
No.
You do need to introduce the ordinance and waive the first reading.
And you do
And it'll
that by
come back.
reading the title.
And it'll come back for a public hearing and everything. But you just need to read through just go ahead and read through the title on it, and then we'll proceed from there.
Okay. I move introduction and waiving of the first reading for ordinance number 99, next number, and ordinance amending Title 5 zoning ordinance of the Newman Municipal Code.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Thank you. Item number C, these are review the goals for the planning department. Bob?
I apologize for not having this in the packet. I'm not as well organized as this one.
Thanks.
I just got to put in your pen. And that's assuming I kept a copy for myself. To make up for my tardiness, I wrote a longer one than Kelly, and I maybe want to hit the high spots. Planning is kind of a difficult arena to define, and planners tend to do it by looking at permit review and administration and what they call current planning, and that's the business of review and approval of entitlements. In this case, the planners are more or less the custodian of a process. The Planning Commission or the City Council is ultimately the decision-making body. We take the application through the process, make sure that we have the proper environmental clearances, and then make that presentation in front of the decision-making body. In this area, we're looking at basically permit review. I'm also have an ongoing commitment to look at reviewing and updating permit application forms to make sure that they're adequate to get us the information we need and to streamline and expedite the process. We're also trying to come up with a process of permit tracking so that we have the ability to go back and make sure, one, the conditions of these permits are being met, and two, to make sure that subsequent permits are reviewed as part of the review for an update. One of the key elements in what I'm looking at down the road is a GIS system. You'll find that that's a geographic information system where we can link data to property information that we in a graphical way, so that we can look at a map and look at not only what the zoning is, but how many permits have been issued to a particular piece of property, and and we can also utilize it for notification of affected property owners, a number of other issues. So what I'm trying to do is link our permit files into a GIS system, a geographic information system. And of course we have an annexation process going on, which is current planning, implementing the general plan, annexing unincorporated areas into the city. We presently have 3 applications pending before the city. We just got one in last week. And those are moving through the process. That incorporates a pre-zoning, a LAFCO annexation determination, and then typically that's linked into a subdivision map and some other form of entitlement. Long-range planning or advanced planning is more or less at this stage of the process for the city a maintenance game. What we're doing is going through it periodically. As we review and implement applications, we look at the general plan and the specific plans and try to find out where we have problems or what can be refined. Initially, it's been several years since we have adopted our general plan, and we had hoped last year to grab some time to maybe have a public hearing and a workshop on the general plan just to get some feedback from the community. Time didn't permit us to do that. We had a pretty full plate, and I would still think that would be something that we should try to take on during the 99-2000 work program. If you have any questions in this, I would love the relief.
Are there any questions for Bob on this?
Okay. Code enforcement, of course, is another aspect of the permit process. We have, of course, our zoning codes, our subdivision regulations, and other special regulations that we have. One of the key things that we're trying to come up with, and again, this is linked into a refined geographic information system, the part of the permit tracking. One, find out what's out there in the area with respect to non-conforming uses, things that predate our codes, that are legally established prior to our codes, to make sure that that one, we're not harassing a citizen to try to get them to comply with a code that they don't legally aren't required to comply with. Satellite dishes are a classic example. We have a satellite dish ordinance. If they don't meet certain standards, they are required to have a use permit. There were a number of satellite dishes installed prior to the implementation of our code, and we really don't have a very accurate inventory of where they are and which ones they are. So it's a constant issue of how we deal with some of these. And right now it's done primarily by memory because there's no written record of these things. So we're trying to clean up our not clean up, but improve the efficiency of our code enforcement efforts to make sure that one, we're not spending an inordinate amount of staff time on this, and secondly, making sure that if we do have a code compliance issue, we can deal with it effectively. And the third area is legislation, and that's again been a fairly major item in our agenda in the past.
I have a quick question for you back on the code enforcement.
Certainly.
Kind of off the mark. Are the satellite dishes really causing that much of a trouble in Newman? I mean, are these being placed in areas that are...
That's kind of a judgmental question. The question is, you know, the city has a code that says that if it's over a certain height, it needs to have a use permit. If it's located adjacent to somebody else's property, it needs to have certain types of entitlements. It's not my judgment is that they're a problem. It's the city's judgment that they were a problem. That's why there's an entitlement process. So what I'm trying to do is get people to conform. You know, again, another example, we had a staff meeting today over a street fair that you have scheduled coming this weekend. Well, we have a code provision that says that outdoor sales and display activities require a permit from the city. Okay. Well, how are we going to deal with this? And so what we're trying to do is get a blanket permit out by the people who are sponsoring it so that they can administer that process. But the city code requires that we have an outdoor display. Now, there's a good reason for that. With the satellite dishes, neighbors would rather look at trees than pieces of metal, and that's one of the reasons it became a code in the city several years ago.
Bob, wasn't this brought out originally for the older, the large 7-8 foot dishes rather
Yes.
than the new
Yes.
small? Yeah, the new
Oh,
small
yeah.
ones I don't think there's any.
Oh yeah, and they're much larger than 7 or 8 feet. Some of these are 12, 15 feet across, and you could track things on the moon with them.
I didn't mean to open a can of worms. I was just curious if this was like a really hot topic with these satellite dishes.
Actually, I brought it up because it's not necessarily a hot topic right now, but it was the first day I came on the job, and I imagine it will be again someday. But it is an ongoing problem that we deal with in terms of code compliance. Legislation. This is the area that for the last several years has been one of the main focuses of the department, and one of the things that I think is finally coming to some closure. The general plan, when you adopted it, required us to put an inordinate number of hours into upgrading some of your codes and regulations. The first one being obviously your zoning code. We also had some specific regulations with respect to historic preservation and historic zoning. We implemented some regulations and adopted some ordinances for the Mills Act, and we established some provisions for setting up zoning overlay, historic zone overlays. We upgraded your zoning code. We have an update to your subdivision code presently going through administrative review. We have the CEQA policies and procedures are now in the process. They'll be in front of the Planning Commission at their next meeting next week. And most of our efforts in this area, the complete major overhaul of our development codes have been accomplished. And right now, I guess primarily the main effort is going to be in fine-tuning some of these codes. As you know, we're in a process of looking at the sign regulations with respect to our zoning codes and looking at some of the downtown business permits, i.e. the outdoor display and sales permit process, to make sure that it's business friendly, and we do have a process that accomplishes its goal with respect to making sure we maintain some visual integrity in the downtown area, have some oversight with respect to how public property is used, at the same time have a good, healthy, and active business climate. So we'll be fine-tuning those things in the future. We'll be wrapping up most of our major legislative areas, I believe, in the 1999 year with the adoption of your subdivision ordinance and the adoption of your CEQA policies and procedures. As you also know, we got the housing element certified this year, adopted, amended, and certified, which was a major effort, a long-term effort. It took about 7 years, I guess, to get that done. So these things are coming to a close now, and that's the good news. And I don't have any bad news here. The other side of this process, and I guess where I would look at this effort being going into in the future is, and I told Margaret that I thought it was kind of interesting that my permit honeymoon was pretty much over with. And when I first came here, there wasn't a lot of development going on, so we put a lot of energy into overhauling our codes and development regulations and getting our legislative act together in the anticipation that we would have again, a freewheeling market that is looking at investment in communities that have their act together. Our timing seems to be pretty good. We have now, I guess, some 3 very substantial development proposals in front of the city, incorporating new areas into the city and pre-zonings and that sort of thing. And our codes and policies and standards are up to snuff, and so I think we're able to handle it. So it frees up staff time to work on these things with good quality codes and regulations, and it also gives the public good information in terms of how to process these things. I think the main emphasis, and I guess where I'd like to be putting or investing our spare time is I call it, and by saying spare time, our priority is to service the people that come in for development applications, and everything else is shoved aside. Because our legal requirement is to process development applications in a timely fashion, and we also have a moral obligation in that area too. But as a secondary, that's where we've been putting our spare time into getting our legislation together. With less spare time, I'm not sure exactly how this is going to work out, but I would am recommending to the council and to the planning commission and to Cleve that what spare time we have is to get our GIS act together, to get a good information system so that we can process applications a little bit more efficiently in the future. We can have better information for planning commissioners and city council members in their development review process, and we can coordinate and integrate that into the engineers' efforts and the efforts of the building department to make sure that we get better compliance and better information. So that's the short and the long of it.
Are there any
4
questions for
pages.
Bob on this?
Bob, one of the things I was glad to see you mention in here is the website promotion. You did a wonderful job in creating that website for us, but I haven't seen anything happen with it. We don't seem to be publicizing it. Like, perhaps we could put our web address on our utility bills, link with other organizations, the chamber, the school board,
What I did do with that website was, I don't know how that evolved. I think it came out of curiosity more than anything else, and everybody said, yeah, if you want to do that, it's fine. Mm-hmm. But we did list it on a lot of the search engines. I spent a weekend on the internet trying to get us listed on the search engines. We were going to put together a report for the city council because you don't get to see it on a day-to-day basis what that website really does generate, but it generates a lot of communication and interaction with the city. I get at least 1 or 2 communications a week. The first thing I do is when I come in on my normal business hour is to download that, and typically we have some kind of inquiry or question, and it's not necessarily gee, I'd like to move to Newman or establish a business there, but sometimes there are questions or inquiries about people who have families here. And we had one today about somebody trying to track down their father who passed away here several years ago, and they were trying to get some specifics about the circumstances of his passing. But we do get a lot of inquiries. It isn't used, I don't think, as efficiently as it could as a community promotion vehicle. There's some things that again, with spare time, I'd like to work on with respect to linking it up into some of our industries here. We have some really outstanding industries, not only in the city but in the immediate area that I believe that we can benefit by using them as examples of how business friendly the city of Newman is. At the same time, it would help promote their industries and businesses as well. So, but it's a learning process, and it takes a lot of time.
Time consuming.
But we have got a lot of people in the city working with the process, and we get a lot of feedback from city staff. It's amazing how many people we have in the city working in the city who have access to the internet, who are I won't say critics, but certainly make sure that we're on target with our facts and information.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just one. Do we have a counter on that, Bob, at all?
They put one on, and
Took it off?
the folks at InReach put it on, and I haven't looked at it, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, there's one on there.
What's the address?
It's www.
.cityofnewman.com.
Okay.
So anybody at home who wants to access that site, it's www.cityofnewman.com. Do you have any questions? Bob, I had a couple quick questions with regards to page 2 where you talked about the annexation process. Where are we at with those annexations as far as the time frame? Because one of the properties out there to the south which generates sales tax, I'd like to see us bring that property in as soon as we can, and I'd like to know where we're at.
We have there's 2 properties out there that generate some sales tax for us that we're looking at. Marty's obviously is and the vet clinic is also slated to be part of that annexation.
Okay.
We have, and I believe you have an agenda item later on that deals with some of the issues, and we've kind of come to a point where we were trying to coordinate it so that we ran these together, and that annexation is pretty much ready to go. The question really revolves around the park site, and the question for staff is whether or not to connect them or disconnect those annexations for the standpoint of public review and processing. It made sense to connect them because they're contiguous, but the issue with respect to the park site has I guess drug out the time frames for the other annexation.
Okay.
But this is the month of the big decision, and we'll be moving forward with it.
All right. Other question I have for you, and it's not on here, but one of the things that I'd like to bring back, have us look at, is with regards to the industrial area. Now, there's some zoning out there that's currently residential that I think we might need to maybe look at correcting to possibly look at rezoning that back to industrial, and I'm talking about those properties next to F&A. I certainly don't.
On the north side of Inyo?
Yeah, to the east of F&A, those properties out there that are, I believe they're zoned R3, if I'm not mistaken.
There's R3 and R1.
Yeah, if we could, that's something I'd like to bring back, because as we look at developing our industrial park, I certainly don't want to see one of our big job generators out there being landlocked. And at some point, I'd like to see us bring that back to maybe correct that zoning, if the council wouldn't mind. But we'll bring back all the information. Okay. Are there any other questions for Bob on any planning goals and objectives? Okay. Thank you very much, Bob.
Thank you for the time to allow me to explain our program.
Okay. 9C, this is, or I'm sorry, 9D, this is a review of our goals for, pardon?
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
We have planning,
Right. Yeah, well, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Item 9D, this is building and engineering goals for the upcoming year. Kelly and Richard, like to take a shot at this?
I'll start with the building department. That I was sitting here watching. I was thinking that it was about 9 years ago that I was here, hat in hand, and Janet maybe is the only one here but remember. But I just started a company, and we had asked Newman to take a chance with us, and 9 years later we're still here. So one of our goals always has been is to provide personal service to the customer that walks in the door at the building department. And we went through a lot of changes in the last 9 years, and our organization, Precision Inspection Company, has grown a lot, and we always have tried to keep in sight that we're here to provide service to the people and to our clients. And the clients consist of the city who pays us to do our job, the citizens that walk in the door to take out a building permit to add onto their house, the contractor who is here to build houses for the consumers, and the consumers who end up with the end product. And that it's our constant goal to remember who we work for, and we work for all of these different people, and that to realize that without them we don't exist. With our growth, we found that we're able to gain more control over the functions of the building department. That several years ago, that you would have found a building inspector here a few hours a day. A clerk was here for 4 hours a day, and that over the last 9 years that we moved our corporate headquarters to Newman. That we've been in 4 different offices. That we're now in our largest set of offices since we've been here. And we realized that as soon as we finished them, we ran out of room, which is good. But we end up with a lot more people here, and that today, if you come into the Newman Building Department, that where you might have had to leave your plans there for the building inspector to look at the next day, we have a plan checker that is sitting in an office there checking plans all day, not just for Newman, but for many cities. That, but if he comes into the office in Newman, the plan checker is there and will help. So we've improved the service constantly, at least to the city of Newman, by our choice of locating here. One way of recognizing how a building department works, and this never existed before, is a process from the Insurance Services Office. They rated fire departments before, and it controlled their rating to a community, controlled the price of fire insurance in the community. Now they've come up with a method of rating building departments. We went through our first insurance services office inspection last year. You start with as if you have 10 points, and the lower the rating, the better off you are. We went through their process. We got a 4. After going back and looking at our 4, we realized that 1 point less would have been a 3, and that a 2 was easily achievable. It is going to be difficult to achieve less than a 2, and that has to do with a lot the way the system is set up. But we look at it as if that we can easily attain a 2, which in turn will make the price of homeowners insurance go down. And that is probably the only mechanism to rate a building department in the state of California. At least they rate all of them in the United States, but in California there is no other mechanism to rate them. As building inspectors, we actually appreciated it. So it gave us some way of gauging ourselves as the job we do.
Are there any questions for Kelly?
How long before you get to a 2?
We have to be rated by the Insurance Services Office again, and they said they would come around at least every 5 years. So we don't know if they may notify us that they'll be here next year. They started in the state of California. When they're going to do the whole nation, they started in California to do them first, which California always seems to be first for everything. And then they were going across the United States. Now we're hearing that they'll be back before the 5 years is up. And when they do, we want to be ready for them. And that a lot of it had to do with tracking our expenditures so that it was easier for them to understand what we do. A lot of it has to do with education and so forth. And so we had to set up our accounting system so that we could actually tell them this is how much money we spent educating our inspectors and providing classes and conferences and so forth. So there was changes we had to make to be able to identify exactly what they wanted. And once you understood it, it was easy to make the adjustments for it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is our new city engineer, Richard Godina. Richard?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As you know, I've only been here a little more than a month now, and as such, I've been busy handling not only the everyday types of items that have come up, but also busy trying to gather up all of the files and maps and things that your previous engineer, Garcia Henry, had in their position. And as such, as I was beginning to gather all those materials, I started to notice some of the things that in some ways were lacking, and started to develop a list. And as part of the list, I started developing these goals or items of things that needed to be done, I feel, over the next year and beyond, actually. As somebody who's set goals for himself, I've tried to probably set a few more goals than can be attained maybe in 1 year. So I think you'll see that maybe we'll come back next year or even the following year with some of these same types of things. But some of these things here are not things that are going to be achieved over a year, but over a length of time. So one of the things that I think Kelly and I have discussed over a period of time has been the implementation of a GIS system, which, as your city planner discussed briefly, is a necessary tool in being able to offer information to not only you people, but the citizens, developers, builders that come to the office, and also be able to process any of the permits or applications that they bring to us. It also is an important tool in identifying some of the deficiencies of our current city systems, such as your city sewers, storm drains, and other infrastructure that are in need of either maintenance or upgrading. And also, it's a tool that we use in also being able to expand or add to in the future. So as a tool, we find it a very important item that needs attention and should be strived for in the future. I've got completion of the Inyo Avenue Street project, which is one of the projects that's currently on the table, and something that was started by Garcia Henry, and something that we intend to pick up and complete in the following year. Another item that we've got listed on here is the attendance of all the SAG meetings, in particular the CPC meeting, which is attended by all the city engineers, public works people, and as such is a place where the city becomes active in trying to requisition any of the federal grants and funds that are out there available for us to use. In the past, I attended those meetings as a member of one of the other cities, and I noticed that the city of Newman wasn't always represented at these meetings, and as such, I noticed that in some of these meetings that they might have been left out or left behind on some of these grants that were being offered or on the table. So I find it very important that we begin to attend or become more active at these meetings. Item number 5 is preparation of a 5-year CIP, and obviously that's an item that's a staff item. And as city engineer, we are responsible for preparing all the city maps, infrastructure maps, and supplying the rest of the staff with estimates and items that are necessary in order to budget for future expansion of facilities and maintenance of current facilities. I also mentioned that we need to address the development of Highway 33. I know there's been substantial work done in the past. It appears that some of this work has maybe not been carried on as well as it should have and needs some further attention. And as much as trying to establish a plan line for that corridor, I know there's been a lot of talk in the past about that. It's obviously a very important thoroughfare through the city, and the establishment of a plan line obviously is a lot easier said than done, and there are a lot of issues to be addressed there, but it's something that we really do need to move forward with in the future. And same goes for the downtown street improvements. There are a number of items that need to be addressed for the downtown Main Street project. Cleve and I have briefly talked about this, but we are, as city engineer, again, we're providing Cleve and the rest of your staff with maps, infrastructure issues that are important and need to be addressed for the downtown area, and again, that's another item that needs to be high on the list. And as you work down the rest of the list, these are items that for whatever reason have been maybe neglected or maybe not paid as much attention as should have been in the past. For instance, the city improvement standards, I noticed haven't been brought up to date for some time now, and there are a number of construction standards out there now that have not been implemented in some of these city standards and need to. And as an everyday tool, this is something that we use in addressing questions that come from us, from builders and developers as they develop their projects, and it's a very important tool that we use almost on a daily basis. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer any.
Are there any questions for our city engineer?
I'm glad to see you address the SAG. I read with interest the grant that the City of Patterson recently received for 3 traffic signals. It was, in excess of $500,000, I believe. And if there are funds like that available out there, we certainly want to have the chance to get them too.
Sure. And there are, and as I mentioned, we need to be. It's something that you have to be active with throughout the entire year, and not just appear at one or two of the meetings where they do talk about these things. These are things that are developed over a period of time.
Thank you.
Okay. Questions down at this end? Yeah, I have a question, couple of questions for you, Richard.
Sure.
With regards to, and this is something that we have talked about, we've had Caltrans look at it, and we just can't seem to get this thing taken care of, is with regards to those crowns on the highway, as far as the entryway going into a few of those businesses in there. And, you know, if we could possibly move that thing up to the top of the list, I think that, I mean, that is long overdue for being resolved. Especially, you know, we've got some of our bigger sales tax generators on the highway that are affected by that, and I just want to make sure that we take care of them immediately.
Right.
So.
Well, as you probably know, there are a number of ways of dealing with that issue, and like you said, it's a matter of sitting down with Caltrans and working out an agreement with them and how to deal with it.
Right, right.
So.
And secondly, one of the things that I'd like to look at as well, and I know we're coming up on our budget soon, is I'd like to include looking at a restriping program for the community, especially, you know, during the fog season where it gets to where you can't see where the middle of the road is. And if we could maybe, if the council wouldn't object to that either, if we could look at possibly reviewing that as well, a restriping program.
We can probably bring that back to you in the budget and have you, you know, consider it as part of our budget process. Not a big deal.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
I just had one.
Sure.
Following up on what the Mayor was asking, what leverage do we have to make some of those things happen on 33? What I'm saying is, it seems like Caltrans does pretty much what they want to do.
If I can mention just quickly, we have had one initial meeting on that item with Caltrans, and out of fairness, it's kind of been our side that hasn't followed up on that. But initially, they have indicated that they'd be willing to talk about it with us about being able to do something concerning the crown and take care of that problem. So we need to move on that.
Since we've sort of dropped the ball on that, can we bring that back at our next meeting?
Sure. I'll
Okay.
get a report back to you the next meeting.
Sure.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, just as an aside to that, I've over the past few years, I've worked very closely with Caltrans on a number of projects and found them, and I know you haven't heard this very often, very easy to work with on some of the issues that I've worked with them in the past. And a lot of times it's a matter of being able to get to the right person over there and dealing with them on some of these issues directly. So I think it's a matter of keeping those communication lines open, and I think they'll work with us on these things.
Well, it's so essential to our city because that 33 is such a main part of our town, you know, and
Sure. I agree.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. If there are no other
Hey,
questions,
If I could just make one comment on, I want to thank Richard for these goals. I will mention that these are very aggressive goals, and that we will be coming back with you as we proceed with the budget process, because as you know, to complete all these is going to cost money as we contract with the city engineer. So we will review these again as we go through our budget process, and we'll do as much of this as we can. I won't promise you we can do everything. So.
okay.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much for your report, Richard. You're welcome. Item number E, this is resolution next to 99 next to number. It's a resolution authorizing our city manager to enter into an agreement with IBM Premier Business Partner to purchase and upgrade an IBM RS-6000. Cleve?
I'll let Margaret
Oh,
will
Margaret, go ahead.
handle this one.
This item is phase 2 of the program to update the finance department's computer system. Last month we had approved the purchase and upgrade of the software program. Tonight we're asking to upgrade our IBM mainframe. It's a mini computer, the RIS-6000. This is a machine that's been on the market for some time. The system we have is old. It was purchased in 1991. It needs to be replaced. The cost of the hardware for the mainframe itself is $8,400. It's the cost of the machine only. Installation cost has not been determined yet because some of the work that they do, we're going to be coordinating with our software provider and also with the company that we get the personal computers from. It needs to all be done at once. So the cost quoted will not be quite that extensive, but we still need to look at that before we actually determine what the cost is going to be. The last phase will be coming to you in a month or so. It will be the purchase of 3 personal computers networked together and also onto this mainframe. 2 points that I want to make. One is that this is being done not because of Y2K. It's being done because the system is getting old. The mainframe was purchased in 91. The latest PC that we purchased was in 94. It just operates on Windows. We're not even using Windows 95. It's time to do it now anyway, and it just happens to coincide with Y2K, and it gives us a date to get this installed. It's also very important to have a coordinated effort in the installation of the system. Otherwise, it won't work. The weakest link of any of these, the software or the mainframe or the PCs, will create problems. So we need to work in a coordinated fashion, that the vendors will work together. We're going to install the system on a Saturday as soon as everything is coordinated, convert the files on the existing system to the new system, and so far it's running pretty well, so we're hopeful we will not have any problems at the turn of the century. I'll entertain any questions.
Are there any questions for Margaret?
You guarantee that? No problem.
No problem.
Any questions?
Margaret, I have no doubt that we need this. That's, we've got to keep up with what's happening. But have we looked into the possibility, I always hear about these leasing options so that computers, by the time you get them installed, are out of date. Is there any option for leasing some of this so that we can be assured that we're going to get the latest upgrade?
These are constantly upgraded. We have a maintenance agreement that takes care of the hardware, and plus as well as any modifications that applies to the software as well. As far as actual lease purchase in terms of the PC, that's still to be looked at.
Okay, thank you.
Any other
After
questions?
2 years, it does it again, too.
That's right, if it's not done
Everybody's not
right.
aware of that either.
That's right.
Margaret, I have a couple of questions here.
Mhm.
It says here on the front page in your staff report that the cost is $8,425. Says that there aren't any installation costs yet or something.
That's not included, correct.
Well, are these the costs here on their letter to you? This $1,850 plus the $800 of estimate. This $2,650. Is this the installation cost?
It's what it may be. But at this time that this was quoted, this is when they would do it totally independent. The software provider is coming, the migrating of our current data, the conversion of the current data to the new system will be done by the software provider. So a lot of the work that they might normally do will not be done, but I couldn't say how much they won't need to do.
Oh, I see.
But they will come down and actually set it up. That's critical.
Okay. But this basically is in the ballpark, I imagine, this $2,650, if it's costing them X amount. I mean, isn't that...
It could be. We're not sure if it's going to take 2 days, both Saturday and Sunday for them. If they just need to deliver it and plug it in, and they could leave, and then Corbett's Willits will actually do the file migrations and so forth.
Okay.
It's hard to say right now. That's why I didn't want to quote.
And the second item is on a little bit below that, where it says the major purchase yet is the 3 personal computers that we still need to purchase. Now, are we going to go through this same outfit here?
We're going through the quotes that I have received are from companies that do work with Corbett Willits.
Okay.
They gave us the specs, and which was really critical.
What are we talking about as far as those 3 computers?
I would say close to 10,000. It includes the computers, the networking, the wiring from the mini computer to all of our workstations, the peripherals, everything included. I think that could be close.
Okay, now this other, when are we going to fund this? When are we expecting to do? Because I know you're looking at the $8,425 now.
Mm-hmm.
So this other maybe $13,000, we're going to look at that when in the upcoming
As soon
budget?
if I can get everything scheduled, as soon as I can get all 3 vendors, we're already on the schedule for the Corbett Willits. I'll call IBM tomorrow. Then I'll try to get a definite price and schedule for the PC provider. As soon as all 3 of them can be coordinated to be here at a certain time. If it happens to fall before June 30th, we can do that. And then I'd have to come back to council and ask for the funding for this fiscal year. In many cases, they would even allow the billing to occur in July. especially the companies that we've worked with before, IBM and Corbett Willits.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much, Margaret. Can we have some direction on this?
I make a motion that we follow the recommendation of staff on this item.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Item 9F. This is to review Parks and Recreation Commission and School Board comments and recommend conceptual approval of park location within the Dave Tatro proposed annexation located south of Von Runner School. Cleve?
As you recall, on March 9th, I brought this issue to the City Council. It received the Council's recommendation, and that was that the park be located not adjacent to the school, but south of that. If you look at the maps that are attached, that would be option 2, as shown here. At that meeting, I mentioned to the Council that the approval, I wanted that conceptual approval, but I wanted to take it to the Parks and Recreation Commission for review. I did that. I took it to the Parks and Recreation Commission on March 11th. The commission recommended that I take it to the school board, receive their comments, and then bring it back to them again. I did that. I actually met with the school board on 2 separate occasions, March 22nd and April 1st. I met with them and discussed this issue. Those meetings I felt were very good meetings, successful. I wasn't beat up too bad by Joan back there. No, that's not fair to say. They treated me very well, and I thought we had some good discussions, and I felt that we have a good working relationship, and I've worked very well with Roberto since that time. You have, from the results from that, basically, to put it short, is that both the Parks and Recreation Commission and the school board are still recommending that the park be located next to the school property. And that I feel after talking to them that to a great extent they do have some good reasons for wanting those located there, and I think that the council should consider that strongly. I will state that after reviewing it and looking at it, my recommendation as far as how I've reviewed it and is that I feel the best location is still not adjacent to the school property. I think what it really has come down to is 2 separate opinions on what is best here. I don't think either one of the sites is a bad decision. I think either one of those would be a good decision as far as what it will provide to the community. I think they can each do that. However, at this time I need council's recommendation on how they would like to proceed with this. We have held up, as our planning director mentioned earlier, we have held up the annexation proceedings for properties in that area based on final approval of this item. And so what I would like to do is request that the council take action on this, either to confirm their previous recommendation or to rescind that recommendation and recommend that we locate the park as it would be proposed under option 1 and locate the park adjacent to Von Renner School. I received a copy of a letter also, and the mayor has that. I failed to make copies of that to give to the full council, so Mayor, you may want to read that letter or just pass it out so that everyone can see that. That letter is from Mr. Dave Tatro, who mentioned that he got called out of town on business and is unable to attend the meeting tonight. So with that, I'll bring it back to the council for questions.
Are there any questions for our city manager on this matter?
Steve, one of your recommendations for the detention pond site is that the Creek Canyon subdivision is only the first of several ponds which may be developed. But if we were to go with the option before us tonight and have it located adjacent to the school property, that wouldn't preclude us in the future from locating future sites, park sites in detention.
No, not at all. In fact, I will mention that the staff did receive just last week, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, a new subdivision, a tentative map for the Sherman Ranch property, which will begin going through the review process, and that actually has a park site on it of 9.5 acres, I believe it is, and that is designed to be dual-purpose detention basin and park site. So it definitely doesn't rule out that possibility, and that will continue to be my recommendation, that as much as possible, rather than locate a park and then an additional storm drain pond, that we try to combine those facilities into two in the future. Other questions, Bob?
No, just comment. I would be in favor of rescinding and going back and taking option one.
Before we get to that point, are there any other comments?
Yes.
Go ahead.
That with just looking out and not looking at either side particularly, basically what we have is an option one, which gives us approximately 3 acres adjacent to the school grounds, not necessarily being accessible because of the fence down there, with walnut trees on it, which would involve quite a bit of expense to clear, to make a park. And we have already one approximately quarter-acre fenced-in retention pond with a 6-foot fence with barbed wire on it, and we're looking at probably 2 more. So here we have 3 quarter-acre areas fenced in, ugly, and or we have option 2, which gives us approximately right now 2.5 acre with possible 2 acres added to it for another subdivision, where we would have a basically landscaped park area that the developer would have to do to make his retention pond, large retention pond there. And so we basically have a park right there. What else the developer may do as far as infrastructure, I don't know, but this is just a personal opinion, just seeing it, going down looking at it and seeing what I can visualize there. But I haven't heard any arguments on either side, so it's just my opinion.
I have a comment. I agree with what you say, and it's weird because I'm trying to think of I didn't get to go to the meetings with the school board, so with all due respect, I'm sorry I didn't get to hear what the pros were. I mean, obviously, it's good because the school has access to that land. But the problem I have, and this is just looking at it unbiased, okay? I'm just coming to Newman, I'm buying a house, or I've got kids. What am I going to like better? A park that my kids can access, all during the day? Or, say if I had kids that don't go to that school, they're older kids, they want to play ball or something, they're not going to really be able to access the schoolyard area, and like you said, it's fenced. And then there's this opportunity to build a park that's larger and also to utilize it as a detention pond. That'll cut the cost of doing that in the future. I mean, it just seems to me like it would be a win-win situation, truly, because the school's not that far from where the proposed site is. And I just think that it would be more cost-effective, especially down the road, to go with the option 2 and use it as a detention pond, because otherwise, it's like a lot of people aren't going to be able to use that area, like when the school is in session, you can't go down there and use the school land. But if there's a park that's separate from the school, they can use the park, and they don't have to worry, they don't have to be concerned about going onto the school property. And I have no, personal thing on this. I'm just looking at it logically, and I'm not picking sides. I just think that it would be a better idea to build the park and use it also as a detention pond. It's kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone, and I think it would look really good, and I think it would be accessible to more people at more different times. So I think that it would be the wise decision.
If I can just to make a couple of corrections. Number 1, our proposal is that probably, without a doubt, the fence would come down. So the 2 locations would be essentially 1 park site. There has been some question as far as would there be mingling of if people were in the parks, and that's one of the issues I brought up from the very beginning. The school district has assured me that they don't feel that that's a problem. That they have, of course, the people that are coming to play the park that aren't in school are not going to be allowed to go on the school property. The way that would be monitored would be through their playground monitors and people that they have that are watching the kids who are in school. So they have said that they do not feel that is a problem. I brought it up, I believe, in both of the times that I've come to the council. I feel that there's potential for a problem, but I think that it can possibly be resolved. And I don't know if Roberto or Joan would like to speak more on this. I'm welcome them to add to that. Right. Yeah.
Was there,
There now, but that fence comes down to there's also a ditch there that needs to be filled in
Right.
and taken down. Now, when we have kids
Roberto, can you come up to the, sorry.
Gotta get you on camera.
Roberto Salinas, District Superintendent. As far as the fence is concerned, again, there's no fence. We talked today a little bit about whether we would put maybe a berm in there or maybe a hedge or something that would look as a divider but would not constrict any of the usage of either land. For weekend usage, then you've got in essence two parks. You know, in essence, when families are going to come in here or other kids coming in, when kids are off track, or as you mentioned, older kids. You know, we do have supervision out there for our students at all times. They don't just go out for recess and there's nobody out there. So the kids always know where the boundaries are. I mean, your kids follow the rules just as much as ours would at this point. So, and well, there are ours and there are yours too. But I think my main question is, if we do the retention, or option number 2, where the retention park is right now, or retention pens or whatever, how long is it going to take to develop? I mean, we saw what Lucas Ranch was like to be bought off, and how long it took to get that developed and ready to go. If you put it adjacent to a school, you know, you've got 2 playgrounds, as I mentioned earlier. I think you have more chance. We've already got water lines set up because the city went to some expense to put a water line all the way through there. So I think there's as many advantages to that as there are to the other. But I think it's a bigger advantage because of the school site itself. It's a dual purpose, whereas if you do the other one, you're basically doing a single purpose. And you know, I may be a little biased. We are a school district, but at the same time. You know.
Okay. Thank you, Roberto. Joni, would you have any comments? No. Okay.
What time frame would we be looking at if we were to develop the site with a detention pond?
That is all contingent on the developer, really. There is the potential, actually, at either site of the city coming in and developing the park earlier. I will admit that it may be a little bit more difficult to develop the park prior to the development going on if we were to try to do it at the option number 2, because of the fact that we would have to have all the engineering for the depth of the pond and things like that, because it would be serving a dual purpose. So that option would potentially be delayed if we were trying to do it prior to the actual subdivision going in. I'm not saying that that wouldn't be possible, but it would require some other improvements to be done that the other site may not require prior to going. Now, along those same lines, I have to pass on to you that the response from the developer on that issue is that he's not sure that his project will work using option number 1, and that he's not sure that he will go through with it, which would mean that that would delay more. Now, I'm just passing those on. You can take that as it is. So, okay. And you have the letter which basically says that same thing from him.
Are there any other? Go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of observations, and one of them is a question. Developers are required to provide a certain amount of property for detention facilities, right?
Correct.
Is there any reason why we couldn't require that those detention facilities be developed in a park-like atmosphere? I mean, instead of being a big hole in the ground with a bunch of weeds, with a big fence around it,
Yeah.
couldn't we require that those be?
We can do that, and there are some cities that actually have those policies in place that require that rather than just a detention pond, that they be developed as a detention pond / park improvements. The problem with it is, for example, the current detention pond or basin that we have out there is a problem because it's so small. That's the key, is if you can combine them with potential park land dedication, then you've got a larger site size that becomes much more feasible to develop and put park type improvements. when they get that small, you start to run into problems of the expense of maintaining a small site like that. The
Seems as
cost
though
per
it
acre is larger.
would be to the developer's advantage to make his development look more aesthetically pretty.
Right.
You know,
And
you're going
that's
to sell more houses.
Yeah, and that's what the developer has said here, is that it is much more feasible for him to develop the dual use of the park and storm drain basin together, and that's what he is in favor of doing. Yeah.
But in regard to the location next to the school, just from a personal observation, I lived in a neighborhood where the school site was next to the park, and it was wonderful because I could take my preschooler there, wait for the kindergartner to get out, and and there was never a problem with strangers going onto the campus, and because the teachers do watch them so closely, so to prefer the site next to the school as an overall.
Would would the school board guarantee that residents in that area, if they brought their preschoolers or whatever over, could use the playground equipment during the day when school's in session?
Well, maybe I can answer that, Roberto. If we put a new playground on the city property, this will still be city property, then the school board essentially will not have any say over it. It will be a city park, and I think they would agree with that. So the answer, if we do not put a playground, would they be able to use the school playground? The answer to that would be no. During school sessions, kids who are out of school would not be able to access that. So, Joan, go ahead. Well, could you come on up here?
Real quick, while she's coming up here, is there any way to require a amount of, okay, you said it may take more time to develop either one of these sites, either way. Is there any way to, I mean, is that our end holding that up, or is it the developer? Is there any way to require either end to have a certain time for it to be done?
No, it's up to the developer and as property. Once he files, I believe it is with the final map, then he is required to dedicate the property to the city. That is the time when we can take it over, then we can develop it. Prior to him filing a final map, though, he still controls the property, and we have, we can work with him and try and encourage him, but as you know, with selling houses, that's all market driven, and what happens there. So there's always the potential he comes in and gets annexed, does a tentative map, the market bottom drops out of the market, and we run into a situation similar to what we had out at Lucas Ranch, where we have vacant lots that sit for who knows how long, waiting for them to actually file a final map and proceed. So it could be who knows how long.
I would hate to see that happen.
Yeah, and that would hold true actually for either site. That potential is there. I'm not saying that it will, but the potential is there. So, John?
This is the real concern that I have, exactly what you just said, is that it's going to take a long time before that retention pond even comes into existence. The property next to it hasn't even been sold. And yes, you do have a hole, but your hole is lower than the property itself by about 5 feet. And so you've got a lot more work to do, and normally retention ponds are put at the low end of a property, not where they irrigate from. And that's why that ditch is up there, is because that's how that land is irrigated, or was. And so I question putting a retention pond on the top piece of a property. You would put it normally on Prince Road in this case, not at because I don't know if any of you, Mr. Reed, I guess, has been out there, but the road sits way below where you're talking about the property. And what I came up for is in regards to your asking us, number one, sitting here, we can't guarantee anything, and we can only guarantee a board process when all 5 sit at a table. So we can't guarantee anything. But what I think Mr. Salinas was talking about is that on the weekends, or after hours, the school property and the school facilities would be usable to that area with your swings or whatever you put in there, plus ours. And what happened is that this thing has actually been planned for over almost 8 years. We moved tables under the tree. Well, first of all, we moved our play equipment over so that it was closer to the park and could be used by the park. And we moved tables out under the trees where the park was so that we were ready for this park. We ran a pipeline from Leslie, a water pipe, that is ready for the park to hook up. And we have had this same session, as you heard from the Recreation Department, year after year after year. And this is actually one of the first joint uses that we started out. And although we've been, they've stated that we won't do joint use, we've been trying to get this joint use for almost 8 years. So it's up to you.
Thank you.
I don't know if perhaps, if you would like, the issue of this not being located down on Prince Road was addressed. Our city engineer as well as the applicant city engineer both talked about that. We can have Richard comment that on the need, but we did come up with a solution that would make that work so that essentially we're going to make water run uphill, right, Richard?
Okay.
But there is a solution that will work, and that was what we needed to work out.
All right. I just have one quick comment to wrap this up. Is you know, at our last meeting we went ahead and said we were going to go to option number 2. After review of this, we have had an opportunity to go to the school board, Parks and Recreation Commission, and you know, they've continued to be adamant as far as this joint use next to the property. And I would say that some of the comments that I've heard throughout the community from people have also been leaning to this. And so I would say that I am at this time going to support option number 1 on this. And if there are no further comments, Dave?
Yeah, I have one more comment.
Okay.
You know, we've had the Recreation Commission, the school board, and now the council talk about this, but the people who are really going to be affected are the people who live in this community, the Creek Canyon area particularly. And I think they should have some input into this as to where they think the park would be best.
Well,
I have a comment too. You know, I think Joni said it the way it should be said, that this has been on the board for a long time. This has been on the planning, and I think that everyone realized that's where it was going to go. And now a developer's trying to get us to change it, and I don't think it's right. I think that this, when we think long-term planning, that's why we're doing that. We're planning for the future, and when we start changing those plans, I think it's wrong. And this is a good reason for changing them.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bob, except that not this. I don't agree with the developer maybe, but just looking at the two options, this retention thing looked like a good option to aesthetically, and it just, you know, and it could be done cheaper as far as the city goes, because the developer would do most of the work on that. The other thing, if we go with option 1, is the developer doesn't do it, so, you know, then nothing happens there. It just sits there the way it is. And the only other question I had, if I could, for the school board members, you know, Von Renner is maxed out, and possibly, you know, hopefully we get a new school. We're all looking at that. But if we don't, there will be probably, you already have portable buildings at one end, the opposite end of the school grounds, and there would be more portable buildings added, which would cut down on the park space there also. Is that right? Well, it would cut down on the school ground part of it, is what I mean.
Roberto, can you come up? Roberto, can you just come, just for the people at home? We'll get the
I'm
answer to
sorry,
that.
it's just,
That's all right.
just like to know this.
Yeah, if you remember the configuration of the school, it is a huge site right now, and we still have land right now in that area behind the existing homes where we can place relocatables. Now, I'm with you. I'm hoping that we can go ahead and get a new school in the near future, and that alleviate that situation, because that's not the best possible solution to keep adding relocatables to that. But you know, I've heard, I think what I hear you saying, the comment that, well, if we build a park there, then it just allows the school to build all the way out. Well, if we were to use all of that land up to where our swing set is, we'd have probably, I'd say, 2,500 students at that site, and I don't think we're ever going to get to that, you know. And so, and then beyond that, you still got all that open area out there beyond, or behind Mr. Hollister's area and all that kind of stuff. There's still a lot of playground out there. And remember, we're running 3/4 of a school at any one time because we're running year round. So, you know, it's not the full spectrum of kids out there. So we would never take a look at saying, you know what, can we use your park as a playground? Because, you know, that's what a school site is supposed to be like. And that's what we're beginning to plan for those things. And I think I'd like to echo Mr. Godino when he was talking about, you know, planning had kind of lagged a little bit for the city. Well, it's done the same thing for the school district, and we're also working on our plans for getting the best use of our facilities throughout the district at this point. So,
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Are there any other comments, questions?
I'm torn between. I mean, it's like at this point, I can't decide because I would like to find out what more of the residents that are in that area have to think, because I think that I'm 50-50 either way.
Well,
you know?
one of the things, though, and Bob pointed out a little bit, was that, and it's been pointed out numerous times, is we've had this process going for a number of years now, and it's been advertised in the newspaper. People have seen it on television, and it's not like this is a new issue that people are all of a sudden being faced with. And frankly, I think that there's been a lot of public comment already, and I think that at this point what we're looking for is, we're looking at some other annexations, and this is pretty much what's holding things up. And I think at some point we're going to have to decide on some closure on this matter to move forward. Go ahead, Bob.
Bob Navoa, 1045 Ruth Avenue, and I've had the pleasure and privilege to serve on the Planning Commission, the Recreation Commission, and the City Council. And about the time that we did the general plan, and we have a former mayor here who can probably echo everything I'm going to say, this was a plan that was devised by the people of this community, not by any one specific group. We sat, several hundred of us, at the Louis J. Newman building over a year, maybe a year and a half's time, and if you look at where parks are designated for this community, they're all adjacent to schools. Every effort has always been made to make a park and a school site adjacent to each other. That's a philosophy. That's something that this community has adopted. I don't think there would be anyone who would say, well, you can't change that. Certainly you can change that. But as it sits right now, if you look at the record, that's the position this community has taken. And no doubt there are a lot of good arguments on the table. However, you were looking for some input. Here's input from a citizen. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. If I can just add quickly to answer your question, Kelly, I will mention that I live out in that neighborhood, and the response that I hear is simply that we want a park. I don't think either location would be better or worse for those residents. They want a park. Correct. Okay. Correct. If there's no further comment on that, I think we've heard at least a majority in favor of rescinding option number 2 and replacing that with option number 1. At this time, I'll ask that we have some direction on that.
I move we approve option number 1, which would be a 3-acre site adjacent to Von Renner School as our preferred location for the new park.
I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. May we have a roll call, please?
Yes.
No, only because I would wait to hold out myself for more information, but since I'm new and I have to make a decision, I just want to say no.
Okay.
No.
Yes.
Yes. Motion passes 3-2. Thank you. Item number 9G, this is consider improvements to flagpole at Pioneer Park. Authorize staff to proceed. Cleve? This is
kind of a simple item. I was debating whether even to put it on, but the flagpole is in poor shape, doesn't have a cable on it, needs painting very bad. And when I talked to our public works director about it, he says, we keep putting it up and they keep tearing it down. We keep putting it up and they keep tearing it down. That's the main issue. What I would like to look at is, maybe some different things that can be done, some security things, possibly even looking at a new pole that looks nicer. That one out there, in order to really paint it right, would be quite costly. But we could go through and put a cable or a rope up again on that and try it and see if it works. That would be very inexpensive just to do that part. As I mentioned in here, Councilmember Reed requested that this be put on, so I'll leave it up to him if he has any more comments, what he'd like us to do. So,
just that this was erected by the children of Simon Newman. Jan, do you know when this flagpole was put up? Been there a long time, I know that. Okay. Anyway, basically, it's someone put a lot of effort and money into it at the time, and basically there's chipped and cracked base tiles, and the pole is rusting, needs surface rust. It needs good stripping and painting. And I feel somewhere there's a halyard out there that's vandal resistant, and whether it's stainless steel cable or what it may be. It may be a little more expensive to put it up initially, but I think it would stay there. And I just like to see it, if we're going to have it there, we put all this effort into these flags we have on the main street for the holidays, and now we have a blank stick in the Pioneer Park there. Mm-hmm. So if we're going with these new parks, and if we can't maintain what's in the old parks, well, why put the new one? So I just like to see that if we could possibly come up with something and get that fixed up by the holidays, possibly by Memorial Day, maybe.
One of the things I'd like to add to that, and I think this is a good suggestion, is one of the things that we've talked about in the past is as far as our history of our community and things like that. And you go through the different parks in town, and you've got monuments in there. You've got the flags that Councilmember Reed's talking about with the base there, and it seems to me that there has just been maybe a neglect, perhaps, to maybe visit some of our revisit, fixing some of our monuments. Maybe we could establish those as some type of program for our community, and just perhaps refurbish some of our monuments in town that reflect our city's history. And one of the things that I'd like to do, in addition to this flagpole, is look at during our budget time to maybe look at that and include not only this particular item, but look at doing some type of inventory of our monuments that we have in town, and start taking an active approach in maintaining those things. So I would not have a problem looking at this item. And if we could also look at the rest of our monuments, possibly doing an inventory, if the council wouldn't mind.
My only comment, Mayor, would be that if you want us to just replace the cable, we can do that immediately. Anything more extensive, we'll have to bring back some cost to you. And
yeah, one of the other things, in addition to not only that flagpole, but I've noticed there's a couple of others in town. In fact, I think the only one that's up regularly is the one right out here. And I know, for example, in front of the fire department, right outside the library, and also in the park there, we've got these flagpoles out there. And if we're going to do one, we might as well look at...
The other ones have flags on them.
Oh, do they?
Time, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
well...
The fire department, the library, and here, I know.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's no, if there isn't any concern, any problems with that, then we'll direct staff to look at replacing the cable on that and bringing back those other items during the budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Item 9H, this is approval of warrant 16684 to PG&E. Can we have some direction on this item?
I move for approval warrant 16684 to PG&E.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes 4-0 with one non-participating. Item 10, these are items from the city manager, Cleve.
Quickly, the only item that I have, I wanted to mention that we have Judy and I, or actually Judy, I need to thank for this, actually finished your procedures manual that you recall you went through before, and we went through and made the changes that were recommended. So I just wanted to pass these out to the council tonight. So.
Thank you, Judy.
Okay. Anything else, please? That's all I have. Thank you. Councilmember Martina.
A couple items. I've been approached by the library, and what the library is looking for, talking about flags, they're looking for someone in the community who's probably retired and very patriotic to put up their flag for them. And so I thought I'd bring it back to the council and see if anyone would like to volunteer for that. It would be, you know, like days when it's raining. Of course, there wouldn't be any flag yet. But if we could find someone who's possibly retired and would like to do something like that, they would be very appreciative.
Okay.
I just a comment about the senior housing. I've talked to a number of people, and of course they're very excited about this. We all are. But a comment that's been made by a number of people is we're doing this for low-cost senior housing, but we have nothing for seniors, citizens that may be or not low cost. You know? And so what I was wondering, you know, possibly is there some program out there that could accommodate those kind of people too, because it's something I think there's a real need for in our community. You know, we should be looking at all our seniors. So
one item that has been brought up to me is that possibly if this is as successful as we think it may be, we do have an additional property out there that could possibly be built as a private
that's what I thought.
Private senior housing project that wouldn't be low income.
Yeah, that would be great, because there's a real need for that.
It's a possibility. So
Okay.
depends kind of on the success of this project.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have tonight.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Councilmember Altamiller?
Nothing right now.
Okay. Councilmember Reed?
Just that we had our first meeting of the Streetscape Committee last Wednesday. We all took a walk through the downtown area, looked at some of the items mentioned by RRM that needed work, and went back to the theater and came up with a whole bunch of ideas that RRM took back with them, and they will have a preliminary design for us, hopefully at our meeting next month.
Councilmember Radford?
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Okay. And I have a couple of quick items. I've received a number of phone calls with regards to the Tatarek plant, and as we know, we've seen it in the paper as of late. I was wondering if at the next meeting, if we could get an update from Ernie, a report on that, where we're at. I know we had the meeting at the county a couple months ago, but if we could get an idea from Ernie where we're at via report, as far as where they're at on their dredging, as far as where they're at on putting in the filtering system. That way at least our citizens aren't in the dark on where we're headed on that. The second thing, something we did a few years back, was we had a open house at City Hall on a Saturday, and it seems to me that it becomes difficult for a lot of the people to either, one, come down to our meetings or get to City Hall before 5 o'clock. So if we couldn't possibly schedule that in the near future, have an open City Hall, and I imagine at that point in time there will be a lot of inquiries as far as Tatarek as well, but maybe we could schedule that fairly soon and do that. Let's see what other questions I have. Oh, actually a couple others. I'm going to be appointing Pamela Cleek to serve on the mayor's committee with the People with Employment, Disabilities Employment Committee through Stanislaus County. And if we could get a letter to her officially letting her know of her appointment. And finally, one of the things that we may want to schedule for a future meeting, I know we've talked about our industrial development and trying to bring more jobs into the community. We're having, the city manager and I are having a meeting on April 23rd with the rest of the cities in Stanislaus County with regards to revenue sharing. And one of the items that I was planning on bringing up to possibly facilitate some industrial development in our community
is to maybe look at with Stanislaus County on some type of revenue sharing agreement on new development within our city limits in exchange for infrastructure improvements that they might make. And that's something that I'll bring to this meeting. Unfortunately, we're going to be doing the Inyo Railroad crossing improvements, but unfortunately we don't really have the revenues available to make the improvements in the other areas like L Street, M Street, and some of those areas. So this may be a way to facilitate some infrastructure and work with the county on that. So I just wanted to let the council know that I'll be bringing that issue up. Other than that, I have no other items. I know our recreation director was a little bit late. If you had any comments to make or any report, I know we bypassed you when we had communications. Nothing. Okay. Okay, great. At this time, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor state by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Meeting adjourned.